My Lords, we have heard some very powerful and moving experiences, speeches based on their own personal experience from the noble baronesses Lady Brinton and Lady Grey Thompson. And I feel it would be almost impertinent for me to try and add to what they're saying, given how rich rich and how deep their experience is of travelling on the railways as passengers who are confined to wheelchairs. And indeed, they also spoke, as Lady Randerson did, and others, of those with other forms of disability, including those affected in their sight and their hearing. If I was to add anything of any great substance, though, I would say it would probably be very much along the lines of the excellent speech made by my noble friend Lord Moynihan, who I think set out a programme very clearly, a challenging, a demanding programme, admittedly, but a programme that should be embraced by the government and by Great British Railways for improving the experience of disabled passengers on the railway. And it is very important to us all, I think, to hear what the noble Lord the Minister is going to have to say in response to that. I know that he personally is very sympathetic to the experience of disabled passengers and the difficulties that they have. But, and I don't make this as a personal remark, but Network Rail as an organisation has been making similar noises for a very long time, and yet the difficulties continue, perhaps not always the same difficulties. There are some improvements from time to time, but nonetheless the difficulties continue, and here we are today, and hearing these speeches. So I look forward very much indeed to what he has to say. I was also interested very much in the amendment moved by the noble Baroness Lady Scott of Needham Market in relation to the Passenger Standards Authority. We've heard too little in our debate so far in committee of the role and purpose of the Passenger Standards Authority. It's promised in the document, Getting Britain Moving, but quite what scope it's going to have as a strong voice for passengers, that's how it's described, and how it's going to be much in advance of the existing passenger representative bodies, we have yet to learn. So it would be very helpful if the noble Lord could also, when he responds, explain his vision for the Passenger Standards Authority. I hope we don't have to have this deferred until we hear about the next bill coming down the line at us, because I think that's very much what people want to hear. I have an amendment of my own in this group. It won't take me a great deal of time to speak to it, but it relates to something else we all want to know about, and that is discount fares. I have to say, perhaps I should declare, that I am the holder of a senior rail card. But there's a multiplicity. I hear a certain hum around the chamber which suggests, to my surprise, that I may not be alone in that. But there are, of course, not simply the senior rail card. If you click the button on the websites that says, apply a rail card discount to this fare, you'll find a drop-down box of a whole list of various rail cards that are available. And I think passengers want to know that these rail cards are going to continue to be available to them in the new system. One of the difficulties that the government has, and indeed one of the difficulties that all of us have got, is that because, in a sense, we're being told everything is now we'll pass this bill, and then everything is, so to speak, frozen until we get the next bill. And as I've said repeatedly and perhaps bored the House saying it, simply getting the next bill doesn't change anything. Change has to follow the bill, and change is itself very time-consuming to implement. So even on a good timetable for the government, we're talking about 4 or 5 years before we see change, and yet we're getting the impression of life being frozen in the meantime. Hence we get pleas from the noble Baroness Lady Randerson Could not something be done about ticketing in the meantime? We all want to know, not just on ticketing, but on other matters, what is going to happen in the meantime when, in a sense, nobody is in charge because Shadow Great British Rail will have been set up, but it has no powers. We're awaiting Great British Rail, and things are not actually happening. So, coming back to my own amendment, that applies also, I think, to the discounted fares. Are they to continue as they are? If they're to be changed, and there may be an argument for change, it may be that a new one has to be added, or some have to be deleted or merged or changed in some other way. What would be the mechanism for doing that? I don't mean simply the legal mechanism, because that exists already and that's not being abolished. But who is the driving force behind that? What is the machine that's going to run that sort of thing? Who will be making the decisions? We would like to know about all of those things. So some assurance about their continuation, but more importantly, an understanding about the change and the directing mind in this transition period, which could go on several years, we would very much like to hear.